In this video, I'm going to be answering commonly asked questions regarding employment if you have criminal convictions. If you haven't seen our channel before, we do videos aimed to help employees, and that's employees either in work or those seeking work. If you like the sound of this video, do consider subscribing to our channel, and if you do, click the bell icon and select all so you won't miss any one of our forthcoming videos. Question 1, and I'm reading off of this. Can I get a job with a criminal conviction? The answer is yes, you can. However, it does depend on a few factors, whether your conviction is spent or unspent, and therefore whether you have been considered rehabilitated or not, the type of job you're looking to go into, and the length of your sentence and any repercussions of that sentence that may or may not impact jobs or employment types or sectors that you want to go into and are allowed to go into. What jobs can you get if you do have a conviction? Well, it depends on whether the conviction is considered a spent conviction or an unspent conviction. If it is a spent conviction, then you can apply for a number of different jobs. Generally speaking, most jobs you can actually go for, but the reality is you cannot go for any jobs working with children, any jobs involved in healthcare, any jobs in the legal side of things, accounting, financial, things like that you can't go into. And there's also some transport jobs you can't go into, such as taxi drivers. If your conviction is unspent, then you're a lot more limited to what you can do. And in reality, most employers can then go, well, unfortunately, we can't actually look at you because you have an unspent conviction. What is the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act? Well, it is a law originally introduced in 1974 that rehabilitated convicts were not discriminated against when trying to secure employment. The idea being, if you have served your time, you have been rehabilitated, then you shouldn't be impeded in going back into work and being able to continue on with your life. After all, the system itself, the sentencing, prison system, our criminal law system, is to try to rehabilitate you, not just punish you. It's a rehabilitation program. Well, if you've been rehabilitated, then surely you can go out and continue on with your life and have a chance to become a member of society, a contributing member of society, and get on with your life. So that law itself, that act itself, is to ensure that you are not discriminated against so you can get on with things. When can you be considered as being rehabilitated? Well, the rehabilitation program can be broken into a few bits, and it is really dependent on how long your initial sentence was in the first place. So if your sentence was 0 to 6 months, then your rehabilitation period is up to that 6 months plus 2 years. If your sentence was 6 months to 30 months, then your rehabilitation period is the initial sentencing period, whether it be 6 to 30 months, and then whatever that period is, plus 4 years. If your original sentence was 30 months to 4 years, then it is that initial 30 months to 4 year sentence that you had, plus a further 7 years. And if it is a 4-year plus sentence, then you can never have your conviction spent. It will always be considered an unspent conviction. Generally, any sentence that is 4 years plus will be considered more of a serious conviction, and therefore one that, in the eyes of the law, and certainly in the eyes of the Rehabilitation Act, then it means that it's going to be difficult for an employer to justify employing you because your conviction was severe enough that therefore you could be a problem for them and you could be considered a serious criminal, if you like. That's not to say you can't get a job with an employer, but it does make it very, very difficult to open doors for you to be able to get jobs. If you have a community order, that is a community order period plus 1 year. If you have a court fine, that's not a cautionable fine or a road traffic offence initial fine, but a court ordered fine, then that is the fine itself plus 1 year until it's considered spent. If you have an absolute discharge, then there's no spent period as soon as you've had the absolute discharge done. If it is conditional discharge, there will be a period of the order that has an expiry on it that you'll be notified of at the time you are issued a conditional discharge, and therefore once it's that period has expired, then it's considered a spent conviction. And the same goes for a referral order. Once that initial period that has been given to you has gone, then there is no further period of time that you need to follow for it to be considered a spent conviction. So it's community order, fine, absolute discharge, conditional discharge or referred order. Generally speaking, they're fairly brief, worst case 1 year plus. That's it until it's considered a spent conviction. Will employers still discriminate against you even if you have a spent conviction? In legal terms, no, because of the Rehabilitation Act, but in the real world, yes, they will. If you have a criminal conviction, in the nicest way, it'll follow you around like a bad smell for the rest of your working career. It just will. An employer doesn't have to employ you, so they can simply find another reason why they don't want to employ you. They don't have to give you a job. Don't look at it as in, well, it's my right if I have a spent conviction that an employer can give me a job. They don't have to, but they cannot be seen to be discriminating against you or not giving you a job purely because you have a criminal conviction. They would have to give some other excuse, but that's easily done. They could simply say, well, other applicants were more experienced, or we felt their skills or culture fit met what we needed. They could say anything they like, really, to bring someone else or make a decision to bring someone else into the job, as long as it's not seen as on record that they're not giving you the job purely because of your conviction. Do you have to declare convictions to potential employers? In truth, no, you don't. However, there are a few things you need to consider. Firstly, if the employer themselves doesn't ask whether you have a conviction or say that they're going to be doing a DBS check on you, then you do not actually have to declare it. That doesn't mean you just get away with it and carry on with a job. The reality is, if you have an unspent conviction and you do not declare it, then the employer can fire you for it because it could be argued that you can't meet the criteria of the job itself. If your conviction is spent and you do not declare it, and then it comes up at some point, they can fire you for any reason within the first 2 years. And even if after you've been in a job for 2 years, they can then bring you through an investigation because they can argue that you've lied on your CV or not declared something that could impede you being suitable for the job that you have applied for. So there are various ways that an employer can easily get around it without being in breach of the Rehabilitation Act. If I'm being honest with you, it's probably worth trying your luck, as it's the employer's responsibility to find out, not yours to declare it, but that's only in the instance if you have a spent conviction. If it's an unspent conviction, then that's slightly different and they can recover their losses if they so wish to in a small claims court or an employment court if they have paid you and you have an unspent conviction. So you may not get away with it in that instance. Will convictions come up if I have a criminal records check? So if you have a criminal records check, such as a DBS check, certain convictions can be ignored or wiped or deeper hidden in there if the conviction itself is seen as minor enough. Typically, most of them will come up on a DBS check if they need to. If you do a deep cover check, i.e. if you're doing anything for government, public office, anything like that, the check itself will uncover anything that's been put to a second layer, if you like. On a basic DBS check, there are certain minor convictions that will be hidden. They won't come up on a DBS check, and therefore you'll be able to get most jobs. A court of law, if they consider the conviction itself minor enough, and you have had time, and that is you've been considered rehabilitated, and it's a spent conviction, then it can be put onto a second layer, which will be hidden from a DBS check. What jobs should I apply for if I have had convictions in the past? If it is an unspent conviction, you're probably quite limited, and therefore you can request some help from various bodies that will try and find you some work, but in reality it's going to be difficult, and the jobs that you would be considered for are probably the kind of jobs which you really wouldn't want to go for. But if you need some money coming in, then that's perhaps the only way of getting those jobs. If it is a spent conviction and where you are considered rehabilitated, then probably about 90% of jobs in theory you can apply for, as long as they're nothing to do with healthcare, working with children, nothing to do with accounting, financial, taxi driving, many transport jobs, or jobs that could be considered as something where your previous criminal conviction can come at odds with. Typically there are two routes. A lot of people will go into construction, and I'm not saying exclusively that's what you go for, but a lot of companies within that field will go for labouring type jobs, things like that. Those companies, that industry tends to be more allowing of people who have had convictions to go into it. Other than that, my best suggestion would probably be to take the advice when a liaison or a rehabilitation officer tries to sit you down. Rehabilitation careers officers will look at it and try and give you some support. That's there. They're meant to give you some support. It's not always the best support. They're more or less just a tick box exercise to try and get you out the door. But do try and seek advice as much as you can for other types of jobs. Okay, so hopefully that video has answered some questions for you regarding employment if you have convictions. If there are any further questions that you have or you want to know the answers to, do put them in the comments below. If you like the video, do click the like button. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and if you have any suggestions for forthcoming videos in future that you want to see content on, do put them in the comments below. And thanks for watching, and we will see you for the next video.